Hello, my name is Michael Swinford. I'd like to welcome you to this edition of the Veteran's Voice. We have some very special guests with us today, and we'll be introducing them when we come back. Welcome back to the Veteran's Voice. Our guests today are members of the Paducah Police Department. We're very honored to have you with us today, and it's good to see you all. Whatever decision did you make as a young man that you might end up being a policeman?
Mine actually started out as kind of by default I should say actually. I joined the Air Force, and while I was in the Air Force, I was trying to be a firefighter. They said the best way for me to do so was go into that as open general, and then while in boot camp, then they said, oh, we don't have any slots for firefighters, you're going to be a cop in the Air Force. So at that point, once I graduated there, I started the technical school, or whatever you want to call it, there at the time, and ended up falling in love with it. And then once I retired from the service, I just continued to do the same thing.
So just a simple transition?
Absolutely. Just fell in love with it.
Was it a good decision?
It's been the best decision of my life.
And you, what?
I grew up in a small town, Illinois, and my grandfather was the chief of police. So you can just imagine I didn't get away with very much. So that was my inspiration to be a police officer. So when I graduated from high school, I joined the Army and became an Army MP. And that's where I retired from. And it was just a transition from that to this.
Is your civilian experience equal to your military experience in the sense of your duties and obligations and all?
I believe so. I would say yes.
Eric, how did you end up being a policeman?
Well, my story is probably not as inspiring as theirs. I joined the military, and when I got back, it seemed like fitting for me to do it. I've always liked, respected police officers, and when I had a chance to be one, I just took it.
So y'all just transitioned from military experience into civilian experience.
Correct.
What's the biggest difference between the two?
For me as an MP, it's the same crime, just different uniform, same situations. Just how we do the process and the judicial part of it is different than what we do in the military, as we do in civilian. In the military, a lot of the chain of command gets involved in the punishment of the service member, as to where in the civilian world, the court system gets involved in the punishment of the offender.
Would you like to tell me about your military career, what you did, where you were, and some of the aspects of it?
Sure. Whenever I had joined the military when I was 17 years old, I kid my parents about I was doing it just to try to get away from them. But truth be told, I knew they weren't going to be able to afford to send me to college, so I decided to join the service, where I knew I'd be able to get that education. And at that point in time, I joined the Air Force. They just happened to be the first ones to call me, so I joined them right away. And after joining the Air Force, I became a member of the security forces there, which is the military police for the Air Force. And I ended up first being stationed out in Cheyenne, Wyoming, where I did missile security for probably about 2-3 years. And then I went from there to doing security for aircraft, actually getting to see a airfield, a flight line for the first time in Germany. And I was stationed in Germany for 4.5 years and traveled all over Europe. Enjoyed every minute of it. And then from Germany, I went to Spokane, Washington at Fairchild Air Force Base. Basically just guarding aircraft refuelers there, KC-135s. And during my time there, I did 2 tours to Iraq. Both of those tours to Iraq were done in a theater internment facility where we just basically secured detainees there at Camp Bucca, Iraq. And while in Camp Bucca, we basically did convoys from Bucca up to Basra, and then we would do what we called Con Air missions from Basra up to Baghdad, and then we would get to Abu Ghraib, and we may do medivacs on Blackhawks, working with the Army. And that entire mission was actually, it was joint mission with the Army. And during that time frame, I probably did, I don't know, we probably spent 8 months there at a time. But anyhow, once I left Fairchild Air Force Base, I ended up going to, I think it was Kansas City, Missouri. And then at Kansas City, Missouri, I guarded the B-2s while I was there. And there, basically, I just supervised all the law enforcement security missions and securing 6,000 personnel to include the 22 B-2s that they had. And then from there, I went to San Antonio, Joint Base San Antonio, Texas, where I worked in police services as the non-commissioned officer in charge of that facility, and was the less than lethal guy for the entire Air Force.
At what point during your military service did you decide you might become a policeman, or did you?
Basically, when I ended up taking the early retirement, I became concerned from listening to my superiors that there was this discussion being had that they were saying that they may cut our benefits on the retirement side. And having already invested 15 years of service, I thought, you know, I didn't want to lose that. You know, I was like, I already dedicated all this time, so why lose all of this that I have invested? And I had 4 kids. So I thought the best thing for me to do at that point in time was, you know, to make a decision, because they had offered early retirement to those that were E7 and up. And I ended up jumping on that opportunity and went ahead and volunteered to take that early retirement. And while I was in the process of that, I thought, what am I going to do? Because they only gave you 60 days to transition from the military to the civilian life. And I knew the easiest transition would be to continue to do what I was doing, which I'd loved anyways. So that's exactly what I did. I just started making contacts with my folks here in the local area, in the community, and certain agencies here at the time. And when I was speaking with these officers in the area, they all recommended Paducah Police Department, saying that they were some of the best trained and officers in this area. So I thought, look, why not go there where I'll get the best training and be able to give back to the community, which I actually grew up in. So that's why I ended up here.
So actually it boils down to you was looking for a job to keep them 4 kids fed.
Yes, sir, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, I think you made a wise decision, and probably the transition wasn't too difficult.
Oh, no, sir, no, sir.
What about you, sir?
Much like Kevin said, I was 18 years old when I joined the Army. Same deal, didn't have any money for college, and the military is willing to get you college. So I joined the military, and I went to base it down at Fort McClellan, Alabama, and that was my first time really back being in the South, so it was a good new experience for me. From there, after base training in military police school, I went to guard, we called Reagan's Big Toys. We guard nuclear weapons up in the middle of New York State. A lot of people don't know about that, but in the Finger Lake region of New York, there was a big Army depot that secured nuclear weapons. That since has been retired, but I did that for about 1.5 years, and then, like Kevin, I went to Germany for about 4 years, and over there I did law enforcement, and we did field operations as a military policeman. And some people don't realize that military police in the field do a lot of combat operations. So we worked a lot with combat operations as well as law enforcement. Once I was done with Germany, I went back stateside again to Fort Gordon, Georgia. And there was just strictly law enforcement for a couple of years. It actually gave me an opportunity to do some college, which is hard to do when you're working in the field a lot. So that was a great opportunity. From there, I went on to Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. And people think, wow, Hawaii, wow, it just, sun and beach all the time. But Schofield Barracks is the middle of the island. I don't know if everybody's ever been in the middle of an island before, but it's all jungle and gulches and mosquitoes and rain. And it's hard work. It's not all the fun like it is, but I'll give it is. Your off-duty time is nice to go down to the beach, but when you're working up there. You're in the elements. There I did pretty much the same thing. I did law enforcement on the base, as well as combat operations and the training in the field. And then from there I went back to stateside again, I should say the lower 48. And they did some more civilian law enforcement in New Jersey, of all places. And did a couple years there. I actually had a chance to finish my degree while I was there, thanks to the military providing college money. And then I went to back overseas to Korea from there. And you yourself have spent time over there in the Southeast Asia area, so I got to experience the Southeast Asia theater over there. A different culture besides Germany and Americans. I got to experience the Korean culture, which is a lot of people don't realize is a very sophisticated culture over there. It's where you got a lot of your cell phones, and a lot of technology comes from that area. So I did a tour over there, and then I went to a lovely place called Fort Drum, New York, which is about 30 miles from Canada, and it gets cold up there.
Yeah.
And it's home in the 10th Mountain Division, which is famous for fighting in Italy during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a lot of cold training, as well as law enforcement there. Once I completed there, I did a lovely trip back to Korea again. And then I came back stateside, and we did deployment to Afghanistan and Iraq. And while we were back from Iraq, we got the privilege to go and train the West Point cadets for a summer. Once we were done with that, I pretty much decided it's time to hang it up. So I took a job as a detachment first sergeant for about a year, and then I retired from the military. And then I took this job.
I can relate to when you were talking about military police and combat operations.
Yep.
I was in Vietnam, Tet 68,
Mm-hmm.
and a mini Tet, the Easter Offensive, and the MPs literally saved my butt because they went right to the front line. They didn't back up, and they protected me and the city and my group, my unit. And I have a lot of admiration for the MPs because they went above and beyond the normal duties that you would think an MP would do. A lot of people think military MPs are just traffic cops, but that's not true. They're some of the finest men you'd ever want to meet. So Eric, tell me about your military experience.
Well, I'm currently in the National Guard now. I joined at 20 years old. I had just got done with my second year of college, was starting to see student loans stack up, and I talked to some people, and they said, well, maybe you should try the military, maybe more to your benefit. And I joined, and I decided to become a mechanic so I can work with my hands. We work on anything with wheels or track. Deployed to Baghdad, Iraq, and we're integrated with the MPs doing fob security. Learned a lot of how searching and dealing with people that are different cultures and don't understand certain languages. And come back from that, use some of that school money to go back to school and start my criminal justice degree, and transitioned over to the sheriff's department before I came here. So, but without starting in the military first, probably wouldn't be in law enforcement.
Well, I commend you for your continuing education. I think that's an asset to everybody when people go to school and learn and advance themselves and get a degree of some sort. What is the biggest reason that you have for being a policeman, Eric, other than just liking it?
I like it, and my son, he is really proud, so and that's kind of my motivation now.
Well, I think your family should be proud of you, not only for your service in the military, but your service in civilian life. You're part of the thin blue line. It might bend, but it'll never break. I have a cross on I wear, one's for my Lord, and the other's blue for you guys. Because while you're out there, I know it's not the safest job in the world. And so I wear that just to remind me that you stand between anarchy and what's good about America. And we appreciate your efforts too. They don't go unnoticed, but as I was saying before, we usually meet you under duress. Even if it's just a parking ticket, there's some kind of duress that we're under. and the uniform itself intimidates us, I guess, to a point. And we try to be nice as we can be, and for the most part, I remember every policeman I run into was nice. They were some of the better people in the world, actually. Do you feel like there's more animosity these days against police personnel than there has been in the past?
I think the social media and the media itself has probably made that more elaborate than we see here. We don't see a lot here.
They tend to blow it up and rerun it every 5 minutes.
Right.
So they instill in the mind of somebody that's not exactly got it all together that maybe they should go out and do something harmful.
Right.
And I've been reading in the paper about some new technology that you all are involved in. Would you like to explain that?
The camera systems,
Body
you're referring to?
cameras.
Okay.
I actually welcome them with open arms. I think that, it's not that I ever felt like I ever had anything to hide to begin with, but having that gives me that peace of mind whenever I am associating with another citizen in the community. It allows me to have that to fall back on if there's a he said, she said type situation.
And I imagine you run into those quite a bit, where, especially in domestic, where he said this and she said that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't come out good. What about in your patrol cars? Do you not have a computer system now that you can utilize?
The laptops we have in our cars, we use those to do our casework, do our paperwork. Everything's digital these days. It also allows us to communicate with each other. We can through that, as well as dispatchers. It's a great tool. It's something I never had as an MP. Everything was handwritten. If you got sent somewhere, you had to write it down. Otherwise, you probably forget it, or you'll try to get a better way to get in there. This way, the computer gives you a chance to look at it. It gives you all the information you need. It's very helpful.
What other kind of new technology are you involved in besides body cameras and the computer in the vehicle?
I mean, other than having the computer to access multiple databases as far as CourtNet or e-warrants to locate someone and check their criminal background or to verify if they have a warrant or not.
That's got to be a big help to you.
Very helpful.
Don't you, in reality, check for warrants on about every situation? I mean, isn't it pretty
if
much an
contact,
automatic
yeah.
thing?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you
Absolutely.
don't know this person, you don't
Correct.
recognize this plate, situations. And usually if something's wrong with the car, there's something wrong with the driver. Been my experience.
What people don't realize is that they have the advantage.
Yeah,
They know who we are. We don't know who they are.
right.
So they have the advantage.
But there's ways to overcome that with strength and determination. And
Right.
that it comes out all right in the end. I noticed you've been having active shooter drills in some of the schools and places. Is this something that's being incorporated into your activities?
Absolutely. We always want to have that edge, and therefore we train all of our officers once a year. They go through a refresher on active shooter training, and God forbid that does happen.
Right.
But in case it does, we'll have that advantage of everybody knowing to do their job and what to do and where to go and those kind of things.
I found that if the people inside know where to go and what to do, it helps the situation resolve itself in a hurry. But this is a tragic situation in life where we have to even talk about it. But it's becoming more prevalent, seems like, as the days go by. There's a lot of stress. And how do you handle stress? What do you do to relieve stress?
I talk about it. Afterwards, we just talk about it, make sure that, we just go over what went right, what went wrong kind of thing. And if it's bothering you, usually I'll go home and my wife doesn't mind it. I'll go home and talk to my wife about it.
Yeah.
And she actually wants to hear it, believe it or not.
That's
Wow.
good.
So just talking about it's a big help.
How about you, Eric?
I usually go to the gym, kind of it's my happy place. So I can go there and have a stressful day and just kind of unwind a little bit.
You go to gym or work out or what?
I'll usually just go for a run as soon as I get to the house, and I kind of do like what Thuline, or this gentleman here, does as well. I'll often go and speak with my coworkers, especially right after the incident, and maybe even the following night. If I think about things throughout the day whenever I got home, I find that to be extremely helpful.
I hear a lot nowadays from commentators on TV especially that if you see something, say something.
Absolutely.
Is your citizens onto that, or are they willing to call you up and say, you know, John Doe down the street, he's got 400,000 guns and I'm worried about it, and could you check him out? Do you get those kind of situations?
Yes, we it's like usually on a daily basis we get at least 1 or 2 calls to some concerned citizen, and they want us to go check something out. More oftentimes than not, it's something that we wouldn't have seen, and it actually benefits us.
So the citizen should be a big help to you.
Absolutely. They're our eyes and ears. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
We encourage them to do that when we're out there. I always tell them, because they're always like, well, we're sorry to call you and bother you, but it's like, no, you're the primary individual that's involved with this. Actually, you're our main eyes and ears. We need folks like you, so continue to call.
Well, in these larger cities, people tend to stay by themselves in a way, and they don't really see anything. They look, but they don't see. And there can be things going on right under your nose that is damaging to personnel, and yet nobody says anything.
Mm-hmm.
If you got the citizens on your sides, then you can prevail, I believe. What kind of programs do we have for the citizens within the police department?
Well, we have, like, one of the things that I like, and I've come across some folks, actually, one of them is a courthouse employee there, and she had made a comment to me that she was actually very unfamiliar with us and how we do things, and actually she participated in a program that we had, the Citizen Police Academy, and in that program, she said one of the things that she actually discovered is that whenever she was in the courthouse prior to this academy class that she was attending, when she would approach a police officer, they would consistently continue to back up. And she didn't understand why. She was like, is it my breath, or do I stink? What's wrong with me? But in the end, what she realized after going through that academy was the officer was not familiar with her being a courthouse employee, and they were just trying to basically get their distance for their own safety, and just trying to figure out, who she was, what she's doing while she's walking up on them. So I think those programs where us doing those kinds of things actually does benefit us in the end, because it lets them kind of see through our eyes, what it's like to do our job a little bit, and just educates them a little bit more.
Eric, I hear a lot about this cops and bobbers. What is that all about?
I think it's when we go fishing with some of the local kids, just to get them used to being around us and make them feel a little bit more easy when they see one of us. And in the event something happens, they can come up, let them know that they can talk to us. And
So you're telling them that if you get in trouble, I'll help you. I won't hurt you.
yes,
It's kind of an outreach program into the community.
yes.
Right.
Do you just stop sometimes and talk to people for no reason whatsoever other than you just want to say
Absolutely.
hi and
Yep.
Yes, sir.
establish a rapport with them? And
Absolutely.
ultimately, that makes your job easier.
Yes,
If
sir.
they're on your side.
Yes, sir.
And they're the kind of people, too, would call you up and say, hey, there's a problem down the street or something. And because you can't do it all. There's just too much out there to do for a few number of people. So you have to almost have the community to step in and help out. What about Christmas time? I notice you all do a lot of Christmas shopping and taking kids shopping. You explain that program to me?
I participated in it one year, and basically you get to meet some of the kids that are I guess, I don't know exactly how they get into that program. I can't sit here and speak on how they get to that part. I know they apply, and there's this whole other process with that. But once they get selected for that, we'll show up there at the police department and meet the families that we're assigned to, and then we'll all basically get in our police cars. They'll get on buses with their families, and we will escort them from the department to a store where they can do their shopping. And we all go to the same place, obviously. But while we're there, we'll shop with those kids, and they have a certain budget that they're given, and basically we just get to spend time with them and have a little bit of fun with them, and help them get whatever it is that they're looking for Christmas, trying to make their Christmas better. lift
Well,
their
once again,
spirits.
when those kids grow up, they'll be responsible adults, we hope.
Yes.
Right.
And their interaction with the police department will be positive as opposed to negative.
Yes.
Right.
Because they're not only your charge, but they're also your helpers and assistants in a way. Do you have any other civilian-oriented programs that the police department does? Don't you have an Explorer
We have
group?
a sport program, correct. We get the young folks in, they get a chance to learn to be like a police officer, what the requirements are, and actually get to do some of the training that we do. And it's a good program. It gets that young kid involved in police work, and maybe it inspires them to be a police officer down the road.
Yeah. So they actually go through some of the same training that
Mhm.
y'all do.
Yep. Traffic stops, all that stuff.
That's a good program. I know one of the Explorers, and he was telling me about it the other day, and it sounds like something that a lot of people should be involved in,
Mhm.
because again, it's an asset for you out there in the field. And that's the whole idea of police work, is to take care of the situation. And I never hesitate to call you. Hopefully we won't have to do that very much. But this world, the way it is today, is changing so quickly. It's almost hard to keep up with what's going on.
Yeah.
And there was a time we didn't worry about enemies within as much. We worried about the enemies outside the United States. But now we have to worry about our own neighborhood sometimes. And if we have a good rapport with the police department, then it can nullify a situation in a heartbeat. Do you still have the ride-along program?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Good, I'd like to go with you sometime.
You're welcome. Come on. You can do it.
As long as I don't have to do anything.
Just watch, but sit and watch
Mhm.
if you want.
Well, my mother was a policewoman, and her brother was a policeman. Actually, he's with the Highway Patrol in Mississippi. He'd give me a ticket. He was hardcore to the nine. But being a policeman must be at the bottom line of rewarding career. Not only is it tough sometimes, but you can be proud of who you are and what you are.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric, being a black man, do you get a lot of resentment from the black community?
Yes, sometimes, and other times they feel like they can relate with me more when they see me get out of the car.
Yeah.
Depending on how the situation turns out, they may be glad to see me when I show up, or they're just like, well, he's just trying to show off for everybody else.
Yeah. Well, that's true for any policeman, I guess. There's people out there that love you to death, and then there's people who can't stand you. That's part of the program. But I speak for a lot of people, especially Vietnam veterans, and I think to a man they respect authority now. We didn't at first. We were against authority, but I think now that most veterans are on your side and they're rooting for you, and they would help you in a minute.
Mhm.
Some people turn and run, and you guys run toward it.
Yeah.
And that's a good attitude to have, because I'd hate to think that we didn't have you. I can't imagine what this world would be like if you all weren't here and we couldn't call on you. Well, we've enjoyed having you, and hopefully you have a very successful career within the law of the police department. And I commend you for doing your job. Not everybody can be a policeman. There's a lot of wannabes out there that would like to be, but to go through the training and put up with what you have to put up with, obviously, it's not the easiest job in the world. But you all seem like you do it with pride, with understanding and compassion. And I think you're an asset to our community. We want to make sure that we are there for you if you need us too. Well, that's all we have for today. I thank you much for coming. Well, it's been a pleasure being here with you, and we hope to see you again sometime in his studio. We're not out on the road somewhere.